very warm welcome back to Capital Sports 3.0. It's not 4.0 just yet, it is 3.0 still, and a very warm welcome, Happy New Year to everybody around the world. Of course, it is 2023. Last time we spoke with you, it was right before the World Cup final. We got it right. We predicted Argentina were going to win. They won. We said it was going to be a swan song for Messi, and it was. We also gave you in advance the notice that Cristiano Ronaldo was going to go to Saudi Arabia, and he signed for Al Nassr for a huge amount of money. And of course, he and Messi are going to play very, very soon as well. We'll speak about that a little bit later. So what have we come up for you tonight? Well, we have my usual co-hosts, Isolt and Andrew Flint, and Nima will be joining us all the way from Sweden very shortly. So the year that was, the passing of greatness, and of course, what lies behind. We're going to be very, very short, sharp, and to the point the whole way through the show, as we usually are. A very warm welcome on to Isolt Cody and Andrew Flint. Happy New Year to both of you.
Happy New Year. I can't believe you just described us as being short, sharp, and to the point. That's
he's on the wrong call. Who does he think he's talking to? Not us.
It feels like a weird New Year's resolution that we haven't been told about.
Yeah, it's aspirational from my side. So.
Oh, okay.
Very much so. Isolt, we'll start off with you ladies first. How was your New Year and, of course, Christmas?
It was good. It was, I suppose you're familiar with this. In Ireland, everywhere was both closed and everyone was sick. So every bug imaginable was doing the rounds, and I think every family had someone with some sort of Christmas time illness. But fortunately, Santa came to the pups and we had a lovely break. It just flew by. So really excited now to get into 2023, and we've obviously had a great strong start with things like the darts over Christmas to get us into the sports and the return of the Premiership and Premier League. So it's been a fun Christmas, lots of sports, lots of resting, and look, the days are getting longer. I said it. There's a stretch in the evenings. It is quite clear that we are coming into the spring months now. I actually said that while on a walk earlier. I'm very embarrassed.
Yeah, GAA club semi-finals were on, of course, today. So that was like, it just really feels like we're moving into springtime. Like, summer's very summer's comes in. Andrew, out in Siberia, Western Siberia, how was your Christmas and New Year for you?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, it definitely doesn't look like spring is anywhere near here. Spring is actually the ugliest time of year, but New Year has been wonderful. Now, I've really enjoyed it. I'll be honest, I needed a break from football after that World Cup in the middle of the season. It still feels strange. We're still only halfway through the season, and yet we've got new world champions. So that has disrupted things a little. But I remember something my mother-in-law said to me about the first day it snowed here a couple of months ago, which is very relevant to the New Year period. She said, "You're gonna get fat over Christmas, aren't you? You're gonna put on a bit of weight." So why? She said, "You're gonna stop running." No chance. Had my run today in minus 27, and I'm loving it.
Listen, I just want to mention that, of course, before we go any further, of course, people know we discussed this with Andrew. Of course, he is doing 10K a day to the UK. Andrew, quick update on it. How far have you gone, and how much money have you raised as well?
It's about 2,400 kilometers into the journey so far. And it's going well. We've raised about £1,100. Had a good flurry of donations for the last 2 or 3 weeks, and that does not include my mother, who of course has supported me, but it's not been inflated by family values. It's been good. I've got a few plans for the new year for this, where I'm going to hopefully tie something up with my local club back in England, which is the very end of the map in Oldham. So hopefully get a bit of fundraising, but good with raising money for local causes there. So hopefully get an extra boost then.
Good. Listen, great to hear that, and keep it good work. Of course, in Moscow, it is minus, I don't know what it is right now, it was minus 20 something at the moment, and they said it was minus 29. Isolt will get this right away. I had a really weird experience a couple of days ago, walking with Tim, and I might show it on air. No, I'm a bit ashamed of it. I'm wearing a Leinster hat, which I got when we were at the Leinster-Gloucester match, of course, in December. Walking, I was written in Leinster, and Tim's like, "That's so cool, it's kind of shiny." It's really good. I was like, okay. And then from the corner of my eye and my right ear, I hear him going, "Leinster, Leinster."
It's like, and it's like the tip, tip, tip chant. It just kind of gets So the county I'm from, obviously, Andrew, they just cheer Tip. They don't say anything else. They just incessantly cheer it. And it gets into your head. And it's the same with the Leinster one. It weasels its way in. So
Yeah.
like an hour after a match, you're still hearing it and beginning to think that you're losing your mind.
It's really creepy. It's kind of just like Leinster, and it's like, whew. And then I look at him, he smiled, big happy smile. I'm thinking, oh, I've really destroyed my own son. But anyway, right, we're going to start off in the year that was with the biggest stories that we had, and the guys are going to have their biggest stories. First biggest one that we here discussed in details. We were the only, I would say, group, and there wasn't just us three here. There were people as well who chipped in, or people joined us. Which really was the biggest story of last year in many ways in Russia. Forget about being banned from sports. Forget about doping a child in the Winter Olympics to win a gold medal in skating. This was Brittany Griner, and as we said all along. I was beating my head off the wall saying the deal is done, but America won't bring it over the line. But eventually, of course, it was got over the line, and just in time for Christmas, as was already the plan. This is the whole thing. Nobody commented from Russia. There was no comments from Russia. Nobody spoke from Russia. Her lawyers were speaking, but they were doing the deal behind the scenes. We are, of course, talking about Brittany Griner. Of course, this is a picture of her on Russian media. Of course, Russian media broke it first that she was on her way home. And, of course, it was December 8th. So, again, a couple weeks before Christmas. People are happy. She's had some small things to say. She was very, very polite, very, very thankful of her jailers, I guess, in Russia. And also, when she was asked, would she ever go back? And she said, who knows what life holds. So it was a terrible story. It was one that, she was done for bringing narcotics into the country, which was made her guilty of smuggling narcotics. Like another gentleman as well, Mark, and I'm just blanked his name, Mark Fogel, teacher, same kind of thing. He's still sitting in jail. Is this the end of the story for her? Like, because it basically just seems like it was gotten out of the way to sort of save the Democrats.
I suppose, well, I wouldn't be shocked if we see, and I'm not being facetious saying it, if we see a Netflix series and we see a book coming out, but I think her remarks leaving Russia when she's under no impediment to kind of, there's nothing at that point where she needs to say anything positive. I think perhaps a very gracious young lady leaving after what was obviously a very harrowing ordeal, because you're the person caught in that situation, in the sense of, as we discussed on the show, she could have been out sooner. It could have been done in a lot of a better way, and perhaps, there's a certain amount of responsibility has to fall with her government for the fact that she was there as long as she was. But it is a really positive news story to end the year on, because I think we touched on it so much last year. It was such an ongoing saga of, will she be getting out sooner? Will her sentence be reduced? And it's a young woman's life was being torn apart. And while we were discussing it in what I think was a very fair way and an important way to bring it up, it's extremely difficult. And you can only imagine that the last year has been extremely difficult for her. And it's a good news story to talk about on the first show of 2023, because it's nice that didn't come with us into this year.
Yeah, exactly. I think it closed it out. In many ways, people were saying, of course, not just a lot of people were kind of like, critical of her, let's just say, positivity towards Russia, and the fact that she also, had issues surrounding the American anthem and so on and so forth. So, I mean, she was getting hammered for that, but she held her ground. She went ahead and she got it done in the end. Andrew, I mean, she was playing out in your neck of the woods, absolutely beloved in Ekaterinburg. People were very sad to see her go. Yeah. But it is good that this has, we know that Mark Fogel is sitting in jail for the same crime. But it's good just to get her home.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think we realised, it was fairly obvious, fairly early on in this entire saga, that one of the virtually blameless people in all this was Brittany Griner herself, bar the mistake, of course, she made of the amount that she did bring in. But look, nobody deserves to be utterly terrified, with genuinely no idea what support she was getting from where. So for that all to be over is certainly a good thing. And I do think that the there could be, or could have been perhaps, some good to have come out of this story, given what you referenced just now, her relationship with Yekaterinburg going back many years, and the respect she has, and clearly the respect she has for the team and the players there. I think that is a really positive story. There's always going to be questions. I mean, look, going back a long, long time, how certain nationalities play in other countries, that's never going to go away. And the relationship between Russia and the United States is, an interesting one, should we say. Anyway, the fact that you've got somebody who is a major, major star in her sport, and has such a deep history and respect and mutual respect, and I think that's the key thing here, shows that, look, sport and geopolitics, socioeconomic occurrences are always going to be intertwined. But when you see sport winning, sport being a pathway for a positive, potentially future example, perhaps more WNBA players will come over to other countries, I think that could have been a positive side of her career. But look, the main thing is the person who I would argue probably is least at fault in all this, is now back where she belongs.
Yeah, I mean, again, she broke the law. She immediately said it. She put her hands up. In Russia, that usually doesn't work unless you're very highly connected. She was the biggest industries who Russia need right now in this time of conflict. They need the metal producers, and of course they are her biggest sponsors, and they made sure she got out as well and got sent home with money as well. Interesting now to see how long her marriage lasts. I don't give it a year, but anyway. Next story coming up is one that I think is one we covered quite well here, and I think we were extremely fair, and also we were quite supportive of it as well. That, of course, is the Live Golf, and to help us discuss this, I'm bringing in Nima. Now, I'm going to get this right because I made a mistake the last time. Nima it's Tavale Rutsari, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Can you guys hear me okay?
Perfect. Yeah, loud and clear. So we'll start off. Isla, I want to continue with ladies first on this. This, of course, is the Live Golf. People sort of sneering a little bit, saying, "Oh, it's gone very quiet now in Live Golf," but they're building up for the season. How big of a win was this for sports? Because a lot of people like the format.
Okay, so I am not actually a fan of the format because I'm a classic golf fan. I don't like change. And I just don't particularly like the format. But I think even if you don't like what Live may be or how it's backed, if you don't like the structure that's coming in, what it is doing is it's forcing a discussion in golf about how they're going to change the game going forward, or how they're going to make it more captivating to an audience. And I suppose in the last number of years, we have seen across a variety of sports different ways of bringing sports to different audiences. So Formula One with Drive to Survive, it's become captivating to an entirely new audience. And I think Live Golf, in a way, it made players come to the fore in an entirely different context, the likes of Rory coming out and being so vocal on things. It was an opportunity for players to suddenly make their voices heard. They're not just guys going around a golf course. They had very vocal opinions, whether you agree with them or disagree. It was good to see players coming to the fore. Now, the difficulty is some of the players, I suppose, who have gone to Live have their own financial issues, which we're quite well aware of, due to particularly there are a number who have gambling problems that are well publicized. So the money is always going to be a huge attraction. But these are guys who are essentially paid vast sums for walking around a golf course, like something my mum does every weekend, and we're not paying her vast amounts for it. And I think the reality is, whether or not you like Live as a concept, whether or not you like the idea of where the funding comes, whether you view it as sports washing or not, ultimately this is going to be a push that's going to change golf. And I suppose when people going Live is quiet, well, golf is seasonal. You know, it's not the time of year when you're watching golf tournaments in general, unless they're coming from some of the more I suppose seasonally benefited countries where you might have sun at this time of year and a nice temperature, but it isn't the time of year. This is darts and snooker time of year, so you know, it's not enough time.
Nima, I'll ask you on this. I mean, there was an awful lot of noise about Live, and we were, Andrew Weiss, of course, in the States, was watching the tours and was enjoying it. So there was a huge amount of snobbery about this. This is like, hey, listen, okay, I'll tell you exactly what I was told from a BBC journalist, and he was telling me exactly what he was told by a golf aficionado who's involved with the LPGA tour, was saying it from her heart and saying that, look, Middle Eastern people, give us your money, host our tournaments, but you have no say in what happens. So was it a bit of snobbery, just sort of like Anglo-centric snobbery, Nima?
Well, this goes at the heart of whether or not we're talking about the World Cup in Qatar, whether or not we're talking about LIV, whether we're talking about anything that has to do with the Middle East, is this notion that certain people seem to think that this is the age of Lawrence of Arabia, and it is not the age of Lawrence of Arabia. People of the Middle East are not savages who live in caves, and you can come in there with your weapons and murder them and slaughter them and overthrow their governments and install new dictators, and then think you can just create countries, invent countries, move borders. You don't like those borders, so you go in and move them again. It's not that those days are over. It's as simple as that. And it's this notion, it's not snobbery, it's imperialism, pure and simple. This notion that people in the Middle East, or whether it's the Middle East or Africa or Asia, are pawns in a game for our British Anglo-Saxon overlords to move around as they wish. Those days are over. I'm sorry. It's dead. It's finished. Get over it. It's not going to happen. This notion that you think that you can, if you're going to sell Qatar $1 billion worth of weapons at halftime between Iran and the United States, as the Joe Biden administration announced that they were going to do, if they're not too evil to arm them, if the Saudi Arabia is not too evil for you to arm for about, 100 years now, and use as a military and global geostrategic ally, as it's so beautifully euphemistically known, then they're going to use that money and they're going to want a seat at the table. It's not really that difficult to understand. And it's exactly, I think the fact that BBC journalist told you that is for once actually rather honest. And I want to commend them for that. But at least they're honest about the fact that they view the world as a white man's burden to civilize the way that they want. And at least I can counter that and say, sorry, mate, but the 1900s are over. The empire on which the sun never sets, that bollocks is finished. It belongs to, it's Gilbert and Sullivan land. It's storybooks time. Like, forget about it. It's done. It's finished. It was once upon a time, but it's over now. It doesn't belong in this reality anymore. And they need to just understand that. And I understand that they have, they have a really hard time to come to terms with it being 2023, and it's not, those days are over. And this is just the beginning. And I don't even engage with it. I find it hilarious. I love it when they lose their collective minds and have meltdowns over the most inanely stupid, childish things. I think it's funny. I can't stop laughing. In fact, that's my way. I have nothing but contemptuous scorn for that viewpoint that the world is mine toy to play with. No, it's not. It was only your toy because you were able to bully people by military power and cannonball diplomacy, but it's not like that anymore. And you're just going to have to deal with it. You're just going to have to accept that reality.
Andrew Flint, the age of gunship diplomacy or gunboat diplomacy, is that over? And I mean, in terms of golf, because I mean, you're from golf family as well. Like, will LIV on?
Short answer, yes, I think it will. I expected more problems to come as the battle played itself out in the public domain. The arguments over, or the moral arguments that were being played out. I think it was actually an interesting experiment, even if it had failed, because it did force people to address priorities in the sport. The PGA Tour has got history, it's got the legitimacy, but by being different, is that in itself wrong? Look, I think LIV has got enough followers who perhaps not all are traditional golf fans. You sort of mentioned she's a fan of the more traditional style of golf, the format. I actually am not against seeing the sporting experiment. For people to pretend this is going to go away, there's absolutely no way that you pour as much effort, time, marketing into something like this to just roll over and accept defeat on day one. I mean, year one is day one. This is the thing. These projects are not built, conceptualized just for a bit of a flash in the pan. They're designed to last, and they will. There is power behind it. And not everything is squeaky clean in virtually everything that happens from a sporting perspective alone. And I'm not trying to wash over the other side of things. I'm very curious to see how the format goes. I think it will survive. The next 3 to 5 years of golf could be fascinating to see how it plays out.
Isla, do you want to quickly come back in because we have to move on very quickly?
I'm going to very briefly say we have just mentioned how things generally aren't conceptualized to just come in for a year. Let's not forget the year that was, one football tournament coming onto the stream and racing away again. So we have had that in case of one planned idea. But
it didn't start. I think if it started, I think it could have gone on. So there is that. But I get what you mean. I get what you mean. Next one, huge one, of course, Messi. He finally reaches his holy grail, and Cristiano Ronaldo goes to Saudi Arabia, and they're going to, of course, meet on the 19th of January in a friendly match. Andrew, I'm going to start with you on this. I'm sure you're delighted to get rid of Cristiano Ronaldo off the Man United books, and we did say that he could go to United. We're speaking with to Saudi. We said that he could go to Saudi Arabia, but we weren't sure. And then right before the World Cup, we said he's going to Saudi. We were right.
Well, I'm not going to say I definitely knew this was going to happen, but if you think through it logically, it was pretty much the most logical destination, because by process of elimination, it was quite clear he was not going to go to a really top European club, because none of them want to be disrupted by his changing, waning powers, his attitude, the whole circus around him. Look, I mean, I do find it a hilarious end to his career. I don't feel sadness. A lot of people have tried to suggest what a sad end to a career. For a self-obsessed man, this is about the most ideal end to his career, because you could not get more individual focus on you than the £173 million a year salary, which includes obviously not just playing, but the whole legacy ambassadorial role. Realistically, this is an ambassadorial purchase. It's not a playing purchase. It's irrelevant. I mean, Al Nassr are already a very powerful side in Saudi Arabia. They had, I should say, Vincent Abubakar until recently. So I think it is a very fitting end to his career. He will play on, and I'm certain we will see, as has been spoken about, a loan move in the not too distant future to a club playing in a certain European competition that he said he wanted to move to. Some people rather lazily, I think, suggesting Newcastle United for the obvious national links. I don't buy that for a second. I just don't think it's just not the signing Newcastle would need. But Ronaldo, he has money, he has individual attention. Look, I'll try and finish on a positive, because I've been generally negative about him. Just very, very briefly, I'll give him one little bump, perhaps. This is a chance for Ronaldo to actually do something good with his ridiculous attraction and fame. He can bring attention on a sporting sense to a league that probably deserves more respect. He can do work, which he said he's going to do in his opening press conference, to promote the women's game in Saudi Arabia. That could genuinely be, for relatively minimal effort on his part, but the attention he brings could be massive. That genuinely could be huge. So he's got a genuine chance to promote change in a positive way. If he throws in a bit of individualistic focus, fine. But if he does the job, it could be good.
Nima, this is terrific. The Saudi League, I watched it for 2 years in person. It's competitive, it's tough. You kind of know who's going to win many of the times, because it's one of those leagues where basically, the princes agree among themselves and they do deals. But at the same time, good standard of football, some decent foreigners, nice skill. This is ideal for Cristiano Ronaldo. Do you think it's going to make any differences, even though he was probably thinking, as Isla said, he was going to South Africa rather than Saudi Arabia?
Well, I think this is the official kickoff of the Saudi Arabian World Cup bid. I think him signing for going to Saudi Arabia is the unofficial kickoff to their World Cup bid. I think within the next few years, if even that, we'll see we'll see that World Cup bid be launched, and I think he's going to be an integral part of trying to get the World Cup to Saudi. And that's how I view it. I view this. I mean, the Saudis have watched how Qatar, via beIN Sports and via PSG, how they've built a network and power in UEFA and FIFA, and they're thinking, okay, well, we're going to do it our way. And I think bringing Cristiano Ronaldo, who is probably the most, one, if not the most, then one of the most easily marketable sports people in the world, I think that's part of it. I think that's the aim here. I think Olympics, World Cup, that's the goal they're going for. They want to host the Olympics, they want to host the World Cup. I even read a report, rather interesting, about how they're actually looking to even host the Winter Olympics, and they're thinking of building an entire kind of, I mean, when you think of Saudi Arabia, for geographical reasons, you don't exactly think winter, but they're actually wanting to show that no, actually we can do that. You can broaden the Winter Olympics to have it in other countries as well, and you can do it in a way that it's going to cost a lot, but because they know that a lot of is environmental sustainability and stuff like that, and they've learned the buzzwords. They're basically learning all the mistakes that Qatar have made, and they're trying to build upon that. That's how I just view this as another way of Saudi, trying to get a seat at the table at the, in terms of PR and grow the way that other countries have done previously, from China to the United States to the UK to Russia, and you name it.
I mean, you're true. The city, of course, they're building the entire city NEOM, NEOM, and I mean, even though Neil has mentioned about the Winter Olympics there. There's snow in Saudi Arabia. There's no
You
snow.
love telling us about that snow. You
True.
love that snow.
It's true.
On the mountains. We know where it is. You love telling us about that.
Listen, the mountains, as you go down to the south, like down Taif and then to the south, it is absolutely gorgeous. Huge mountains, just like huge, straight up, like up to the sky. Snow. There's monkeys. It's amazing. And when basically, it makes sense in many ways. Are they changing for good? I don't know. And again, I would never be one to sort of run down Saudi's ambitions, because when they want to do it, they do it. Like when Qatar, as Liam said, want to do it, they did. Isla, just on Messi's legacy. I mean, has he sealed his legacy? He can walk off now into the sunset, or at least get a big couple of paydays with PSG.
I certainly think he can, and I think his World Cup was an exceptional one, and I think there's something like, it is important that winning the World Cup for him, it was obvious how much it meant, not just to him, but it almost felt like it meant so much to the players for him to win it, and how he had come back after saying he was going to retire, and how the team had been run. It just seemed like a team that really played for one another, and they were, I think they were the highlight of the World Cup. Without winning it, it felt like as a team they were incredibly unified, and I suppose it puts to bed for a lot of people the discussion as to who the greatest of this current generation, because I don't necessarily think we can say Ronaldo and Messi are the greatest full stop. Maybe Messi is at this point, for a lot of people, settling that debate. But I think he was a real highlight of the World Cup. I think the Argentinian team were a real highlight to watch, and how they started, I suppose we're talking about Saudi, how their World Cup started was not exactly how you would expect the winning team's World Cup to start. And I know Andrew said that he found having the World Cup midway through the season a bit exhausting. I actually really enjoyed it, so I know I've waxed lyrical about before. But in a weird way, did it feel like all of a sudden the World Cup was over? Messi has decided, like, he has basically reached the pinnacle, and we're talking about Ronaldo immediately. It's still the Ronaldo show. It's just interesting. It's been an interesting few months for football, I think. And as Andrew rightly pointed out, if Ronaldo is saying he's going to go in and do what he can to promote the game in Saudi Arabia, it's the same way boxing has really taken off from having fights going there. And that's the idea of whenever any sport goes anywhere globally, what we want to see as a direct result of major players or major tournaments going somewhere is we want to see growth at grassroots. And it actually, like, it's happening in terms of boxing. So it would be great to see the same happen for the women's game in football, and just for bringing more eyes onto a sport in any country, because that's good for players internally if they want to move abroad. And that's what
I remember here in Sweden, I think it was a year and a half ago, I think it was, I can't remember exactly, but we had a Saudi girls ice hockey team come to Gothenburg to play in a tournament. Like that, this notion, it's everything, things aren't that two-dimensional as some may seem. Yes, the the Wahhabi, they are Wahhabites, and that's it's a very, very, very archaic and patriarchal religion, to put it mildly, or interpretation of Islam, even, because it's not really, it's an interpretation of Islam. And yes, they're not exactly known for having legal human rights, but there's also another side. It's a very dynamic and vibrant society. The young women who grow up there are not, they don't live in another dimension. They don't live in another age. They are young women who all want to have a future, who all want to have a say in their lives, and they are going to win their rights, whether the men like it or not. It's as simple as that. And it goes forward slowly, but slowly it goes forward. And this, this was unthinkable. Women's ice hockey, girls playing ice hockey in Saudi Arabia, going to play in a youth tournament in Sweden. I mean, told me that 10, 15 years ago, I think you'd be mad. But the world is, these things, the world is changing, and that this is part of that. And I think it's really, really interesting just to, it's going to happen. And I think we have to be more open to these things, that it's a changing world. As for Messi, I think it absolutely kills the debate, like you said, of who he's completed football. I mean, he's won won the Olympics, he's won the World Cup, he's won Copa America, he's won everything that matters at club level. He's set ridiculous amounts of records in European football. I think the one that he's going after is to go past Cristiano Ronaldo in terms of goals scored in the Champions League. And I think that's why Cristiano Ronaldo is so hell set on being loaned back to a Champions League club whenever he can, because he doesn't want Messi to go past him in terms of goals scored. I think that's what it's about, more than winning Champions League trophies. I do think that PSG could actually end up winning the Champions League this year. I think it's between them, Bayern Munich, and Man City, with City and Bayern Munich particularly being my favorites. But no, I mean, I think this is it. I mean, does he go? I wouldn't be surprised if he decided to, because one thing about Messi, he's always, in his career in Argentina, he's never been that loved until now. It's always been, everyone was like, well, he's not one of us, he's a bit European. They were a little bit iffy. But this World Cup, that changed. It really changed. And Messi kind of, I know he's been the captain before, but the way that he behaved, the way that he defended his team, the way that he spoke, the way that he acted, a lot of people in Argentina it resonated with people in Argentina, and they felt that he was now one of them. And I think that's something that I think he would like to build on. Does he go back to Argentina to win a Copa Libertadores, for example? Does he do that for a season? Does he go to a Boca or River, or does he do something like that, or does he go straight to the MLS or an Arabic country? We don't know. But I think for him, there's talk of him extending his contract with PSG. I don't know. We'll see what happens there. But I think Champions League is what PSG want. They want to win the Champions League, and I think if he can win the Champions League with them already this season, I don't think there's that much left to do, to be honest, in European football.
Moving very quickly on this huge story, the very start of the year, we were on air when the decision was being made on the 26th of February, or sorry, the 27th of February would have been, we were on air. Russian clubs and national teams kicked out of all international competitions. We see here the Russian men's team and the Russian women's team, of course, they both qualified for the Russian qualified for the World Cup, and the men's team were, looking likely to qualify for the World Cup. The decision was made by both FIFA and UEFA to suspend them from all competition, plan to suspend them. We discussed it on the radio, we discussed it here many different times, and with people from Russian football, within Russian football, and it was the right thing to do. There was no way Russia was going to be able to play safely, or any teams safely in competition, so long as the conflict was going on in Ukraine. It would have been absolute madness, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't even have to get into the moral aspect of it. It was just a plain safety issue on both sides. I mean, it would have been which is madness, of course. I don't think anybody in the heart of hearts disagrees with certainly the immediate ban. How long it goes, how it will be enforced from here on in, that's just simply an evolving situation depending on the obvious factors on the ground that will be a major factor in this. It's not going to be a quick, smoothly resolved situation. From a sporting aspect, we've already seen, like you mentioned, how the Russian football authorities have been for some time, as we know, considering mulling over the option of moving over to the Asian Confederation, which I think is a very, very awkward situation to decide. Personally, I don't think it would long-term benefit Russian sport. But anyway, that's a separate issue. The ban was. I actually see a question there. Why did Russia not go to Asia? Well, I mean, Alan, you spoke to Alexander Zotov about the decision, how it was made and how it was reached, and it was a split decision from what we understand. It was a very close call. I think one of the main reasons, this is just my own personal opinion, I'm not saying this is necessarily is what the decision maker said, but I think one of the main reasons is simply because this is not just a short-term decision, because ultimately Russia wants to be in Europe because that is the best confederation. It's as simple as that. Not just from international, but club sports as well. And if you move over to the Asian Confederation, just switching back at the flip of a hat is not going to happen. You have to pick cycles. You have to have the will of the international community as well. So in the short term, does it really benefit? Russian clubs will be weakened in the long term, I think, with the players they would attract to the league, which is already a bit of a problem. So that's the real reason, I think. I think possibly nerves at the size of what the move would mean.
Yeah, I mean, money would have been a huge issue as well. We went through that as discussed with Alexander Zotov. It would have been brilliant for Russia, brilliant for Asia if they had gone. I firmly believe that. However, it was very, very much split. It went down to the wire. They had to make a decision by the Saturday, the 31st. Of course, the last working day was the 30th, so they made a decision on the Friday. It wasn't going to happen. I heard the debates that were going on. I listened to it. I knew where people were pulling from. An interesting one, Valery Karpin, the Russian coach, of course, born in Estonia. He's also an Estonian citizen. He's a Spanish citizen because he played for so long in Spain. He actually played for Galicia as well in the north of Spain. He's very much beloved there. He wanted to go to Asia. We just have to play football. It doesn't matter where. We just go and play. We can't afford, and what he said, we can't afford to be snobs. That's what he said. Now, well, I understand where he's coming from as well. But I don't think it was snobbishness surrounding the decision. As Andrew said, it was so much more to at play. And of course, then Valery Karpin, just this past week, was then damned because he took a selfie photo that was up on Instagram with former Estonian footballers, guys he knew from his childhood he played with, and some guys that were younger, and they wanted a photo with him. They put it up on social media and were absolutely slaughtered. So, this is a guy who's... anyway, Nima, very, very quickly on this, good or a bad thing that Russia didn't decide to go to Asia?
I mean, in the short term, I think financially, yes, it would have been bad for them to go to Asia in the short term. But I mean, at the end of the day, this isn't, the European countries have decided, the NATO countries are not going to change their stance on Russia, and Russia certainly isn't going to change its stance politically. So you got to kind of make that decision. What do you do? Because no matter what happens, I cannot imagine a situation where CSKA Moscow goes to any of the NATO countries to play, or Spartak or Lokomotiv, and it's not just going to turn into a complete political shit show. So I think the best thing to have done would have been to go to Asia. I really think so. Because yes, maybe in the short term, the sporting side of it would have been wrong, and they would have lost a lot of money and all that. But at the end of the day, there's no turning back politically from what has happened and has been happening. And I know I don't want to go into the politics of it, but this did not start in February 2022. This has been a long time coming, and this is the point of no return for Russia and for Russia's friends and for NATO and their allies. So I think they're just postponing the inevitable. I think they have to join. Otherwise, they're just going to spend the next decade not being let into any into any sporting events, which is ridiculous, really.
As Andrew Flynn said, Russian clubs are already hit. You can even see some of the players, and we saw, of course, Anatoly Timoshuk, who is a massive Ukrainian patriot. He's coaching up in St. Petersburg with Zenit. Of course, he won leagues with Shakhtar Donetsk. He played with Bayern Munich, played with Zenit on 2 different spells, also finished his career in Kazakhstan. He was slated for not coming out against the war when he was working in St. Petersburg, but his wife, ex-wife and kids are living in Germany. And as he told me, we're keeping it quiet. We're not going to get involved in anything because I have family in Ukraine, and we discussed it, and they said to keep quiet. Yesterday or day before yesterday, Vladimir Zelensky put him on the sanctions list and confiscated all his properties, monies, and also families' properties and families' monies in Ukraine. It makes no sense. This is a former, record 144 caps for Ukraine, and this happens to him. It's this madness. So when we were going on the air, right after everything started in Ukraine, we did have a discussion amongst ourselves, and I asked you straight up, "Are you comfortable with this? Do you see a way back for Russia? Because it just seems to get worse. And now, of course, Croke Park is going to be used to house up to 50 Ukrainian refugees. It's not getting any better."
I think the thing we have to consider in all of this is there seems to be a different approach in different sports to how Russian athletes, competitors, and teams are being treated. So in certain sports, we're seeing them compete, in others we're not. And obviously, from a football perspective, it's quite a black and white position. I think there has to come a point where we need to, and hearing that is just horrific for the St. Petersburg coach, where we have to stop sanctioning people for their comments or their lack of comments on an issue, in the sense that these are sports players and athletes. I think it's very important that they have a platform, but we can't sanction someone for not using their platform in a particular way because we don't like the idea that they're not coming out and vocalizing something. It's also a gentleman who, as you mentioned, has family in various places and needs to be conscious of that. I think from Russia's perspective, I couldn't agree more with Nima. I think they needed to perhaps look at where they're going to be in a few years' time and consider if there isn't a way back in what I think any of us can see in the immediate future in football for Russia in Europe. And from a player perspective, and people who are these are professional athletes, these aren't a Sunday league side, they need to be making a living, and perhaps a split decision that to an extent went in terms of snobbery and thinking, oh, if we go to Asia, we're not coming back into the European route. But if you don't, what position are you putting your players in? And it's a very difficult, I don't envy people trying to make those sort of decisions because of the long-term nature of it and what it means to Russian sport. But I think 2023, in terms of Russian athletes, is going to continue to be more of the same. And I just hope we don't have a repeat with the likes of Wimbledon, where it wasn't a case of complaining about what athletes were saying. You have an open forum to say what you want. It was sanctioning for not saying something, which I think is a very different thing that disregards how people's personal, not their views, but how their lives could be impacted by what they come out and say.
Perfectly right. And also, it wasn't, Isel, you're right, it's not even what they said, it's what they were supposed to say according to the narrative. For example, Rublev at the Australian Open, I think it was in maybe one of the Middle East tournaments, but like, no war. So a lot of Russian players, Medvedev as well, came straight and said, Ukraine. They came out straight away, no war. We don't want war. Let's have peace.
Aren't you guys tired of athletes and pop stars and actors and actresses and influencers and I don't know, whatever the hell it is, being held to a higher account than politicians? Because I'm exhausted with it. I am sick and tired of listening to Harry Kane be slated for some bullshit armband that he decided not to wear when he was in Qatar to play a football tournament, whilst I don't care what Harry Kane thinks. I don't go to Harry Maguire for spiritual and moral guidance.
Right? No one should do that.
I am exhausted with this bullshit. I'm sorry for swearing, but if the people who are in charge of political decisions are the ones who should be held to account. I don't care
Exactly.
about what Sean Penn thinks. I don't go to him for. You're perfectly free to do that if you want, but I don't give a shit what Sean Penn thinks about vaccines. I give less than a shit what Sean Penn thinks about the world. I have never cared about it, even when he was politically on my side or when he's against me. I don't care. It's not interesting for me. I'm tired of this ridiculous, compulsive, obsessive behavior. This almost like a mental verbal tick that we turn to people who don't have any political power to and demand them of answers or lack of answers in some cases. It's utterly bizarre. I don't even have the words to describe how stupid this thing is, because the war is, we didn't go, Russia and Ukraine are not in a conflict or a war with one another with one another because of something that, I don't know, Kuznetsov on the WTA tour said. All right, this is childish. Grow up. These are geopolitical issues that have been going on for decades, and they lead to a tipping point where we are now. And this just goes on and on and on and on. And I'm like, I don't understand. I do understand, of course. It's nothing more than the Wizard of Oz. It's deflection. Don't hold the people who with actual power to account. No. Hey, go against your neighbor. Go against this. Put your anger against this actor or actress or sports star.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I don't care. I'm sorry, but I don't care.
Andrew, you want to jump in real quick?
Well, no. I just I'm agreeing very wholeheartedly with what Nima says. I think that is one thing that I noticed almost verging on dangerous escalation in the last year is quite how much focus on every single non-sporting opinion action that people have taken. Like Nima says, I think it is getting, if it gets out of control much longer, it's a very dangerous situation. You talked about.
I remember. Sorry to interrupt you. I remember Paul Stanley from Kiss, the lead singer from the rock group Kiss. I think it was like 15 years ago, when he was sitting there in full makeup, Star Child makeup, at a press conference in China, and someone asked him about political stability in China, and he looked at the guy and said, "Dude, I'm a guy in makeup with a wig playing 70s rock music in stilettos. What do you want from me? I'm here to play rock music. Leave me alone." Like it's, and I completely get that.
We're sort of half acting surprised. Of course, everybody knows the full reason why. Exposure, followers, and reputation matter far, far more than anything of actual substance. That is simply the state of the world today for the vast majority of us, and is part of the system we live in, and that includes sport. Cristiano Ronaldo is the obvious global star, arguably the most recognizable, brandable sports star in the world. And Al Nassr's, I believe their Twitter account got 10 times the number of followers within a week or a day of him joining. Instagram the same. I mean, it's just, that matters more than somebody who is actually making change but has 100,000 followers in today's logic, which is mad.
Or even people who have very, very few followers. Look, the one thing I think was very, very, we can criticize Gianni Infantino all we want, but he stood very firm in terms of when Zelensky said he wants to put out a message of peace at halftime in the World Cup, and FIFA said no. And I think it was the right thing to do at that moment, because they needed, to move away from it. And of course, Zelensky's view of peace is a very, very different view of peace than what even of his own compatriots that I know what they want. So it just was insane. Of course, the Australian Open organisers, the Australian Tennis Federation, they are allowing Russian and Belarusian players play, same as the US Open, because they said they are not playing under any flag. That's it. And they're tennis players, and that's it. Of course, the Ukrainian ambassador to New Zealand and Australia strongly reacted to that and was I think he was wrong how he behaved himself, because mind the players he was slating were the ones who actually are reaching out and assisting. And what he doesn't understand is, on the tennis tour, in women's tour, they hate each other with passion, but they're all friends. Men's tour, they're all friends. They'll go drinking, partying together, but they're all friends. And there are some outliers who will say, I don't like Kostyuk, who say, I don't like Russians and so on. But at the same time, behind the scenes, they're all friends. So moving very quickly on, and still on the theme of tennis, one huge one, just a very, very quick take from all you on this. Greatest star of the last 25 years, without a doubt, Serena Williams, retired age 41 now. She was just about to turn 41. She's out of the game. We had a huge discussion with myself and Isolt and Pyre Dearwan about her mixed legacy. Isolt, let you very, very quickly start off on this, just a minute if you can. Will she be missed, and will tennis miss her?
I think Serena is probably the most influential tennis player, a female tennis player we have ever had, in the sense of not necessarily just from an achievement perspective, because obviously she nearly took the record away from everyone's favorite record holder. I'm not even going to mention her name because my detest is so strong. But Serena's legacy is about more than just tennis. Serena has brought, she has crossed boundaries in terms of her exposure on a global scale and how much interest she's brought to the game. Like, people watch it, like, she basically is the equivalent of Roger Federer for a lot of people. The eyes of, or possibly Nadal, who actually has a larger following, if we're going to discuss that in terms of Twitter and Instagram and all of that. She's brought the game to a different level, and she's changed how tennis is perceived. Certain parts of her legacy are obviously tarnished for various reasons. Some of her conduct over the years, particularly towards officials, has been reprehensible. But at the end of the day, from a tennis perspective, I think you could walk into anywhere in the world and say Serena Williams, and people would associate her instantly with tennis and know who you were speaking about. And whether you like aspects of her character at various times or not, she has changed tennis in a way that no one else has and made it a different sport.
True. Andrew, I think Fiona Flynn, she wasn't a fan of hers, but she did admire her.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree wholeheartedly with the way you sort of characterised Serena Williams' legacy. Character and personality are not relevant for 90%, in my opinion, of your consideration of the impact and legacy of a player. It is a part, the way you comport yourself around. Of course, it matters. It is important. Serena's the best player for women in the generation, undoubtedly. And I think it's so hard to know the full picture. Of course, we see more and more comments and documentaries in recent years about what goes on behind the scenes, how tennis players, young tennis players particularly, are brought up. But being moulded into a world champion by a very, very powerful, strict father. I'll never forget being at Wimbledon, the only time I actually went in person, and there he was sitting at a picnic table by himself. And I thought, well, I'm not likely to cross paths with Richard Williams ever again. So I'm like, no, within 2 meters, I wheeled away, because he didn't snarl, but the focus and intensity in his eyes, it really was terrifying. And this was from 15, 20 meters away. Imagine if you are his daughter, who he has pushed. How far and how hard is something we will never fully know, but certainly very hard. She lived in that system. She didn't have that choice, in a way, and certainly not until she was already in the world's eye. By the time she was a teenager, she was already a world-class player. And she's still gone through into her 40s. That is a remarkable achievement, no matter how she got there. But I think the way she got there was very, very, very impressive. Records are obviously numbers of absolutely crazy what she achieved, but the way she's comported herself is a mixed bag. But the positive side is certainly there.
You're on mute.
Well called. Thank you. At least I got my way there for the year, so I started off the year in a high. Nima, she always pushed herself forward as like a mother, black woman, but she always seemed to tend more towards the white community. She was never kind of, there were other, like Chandler Rubin, for example, was very much kind of in the black camp. Zina Garrison the same. So she kind of was kind of a crossover. But will her legacy bring more, for example, ethnic players into the game? She did, well, like Naomi Osaka did say that she was one of her role models. So will that matter as the years progress?
I absolutely think that. Look, Serena, the Williams sisters You know, because I think Venus gets overlooked a lot unfairly for her career, because I think she was, you know, I remember the first time I watched her play, and I was blown away by how powerful and strong and athletic she was. Because I mean, let's remember women's tennis before that with, you know, Steffi Graf and Monica Seles and even Martina Navratilova. They were much more. It was a different kind of game. With the Venus sisters, especially with the Williams sisters, they made women's tennis much more powerful, on par with, you know, that there were actual debates on, you know, comparing them to the men, and that was something that would not have happened without them trailblazing, and they were trailblazers. And I think the sheer fact that the greatest female tennis player in the modern age of all time is arguably Serena Williams will undoubtedly help more girls, more regardless of their race, but also girls who might not look petite, who might have a different physique, who might have a different style of play. That will open a lot of doors for them. I think a lot of self-conceptions of how a female tennis player should look, how they should act, how they should dress, the style they should play, they just didn't give it. They destroyed all of those images. Venus and Serena did. And I mean, the fact that she at 41 was still competing for slams is unbelievable. The longevity of it just makes her the greatest of all time, and it's not even close. Serena, I think she, you know, she was, I know she never won, you know, she didn't go past Margaret Court, but you know, Margaret Court played in a different era as well. And I think for me, I just hold Serena as the greatest in terms, just on the tennis court. I think she was unbelievable. And the way that she prepared as well, she brought a different kind of professionalism and preparation and into women's tennis as well, and tennis as a whole. I think, I mean, the way that Ivan Lendl in the 80s was one of the first to start to introduce weightlifting into tennis, you know, she's just as, I think there is a before and after Venus and Serena Williams in tennis, not just women's tennis.
Look, I think you're spot on with that. I mean, there's so many questions. I've been a huge critic of hers in terms of the people she's worked with, what she's done, in terms of what she would have taken to advance her career and so on, her behavior. But at the same time, on the court, when she played, phenomenal, huge power player. She also had lovely touch as well. I think the problem I felt was that as she got older, she seemed to she got heavier, more and more bulky, which took away from the absolute beautiful grace that she had. She was very, very skillful. You're right, Venus.
Very reminiscent of Boris Becker, actually. The older Becker got, the heavier he got. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and she moved. And I mean, you're dead right. Venus, of course, has just pulled out of the Australian Open through injury. Venus, I thought, was like a lovely player, but the problem was mentally she seemed a bit weaker, and it always did seem, and there was that, who knows what happened, but always when the two girls played each other, and it wasn't very often, the father decided who was going to win. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I do believe that Venus was a bit weaker. From people who played against her, they said that, you know, you get into her head, and she always seemed very, very nervous. But look, we're running out of time, big time on the show, and there was so much more we wanted to cover, including the deaths of three absolute superstars of world football. But we can't go to the next. We're actually almost over time right now. But one, I want to finish on a positive note. Nima, would you come back next Sunday? Would you come back with us again?
Sure.
Great. Okay, there you go. So that's settled. I want to finish on a high low. I don't know, but it is a bit cheeky to bring this in. The retirement of one of the all-time greats of sports, the CEO of the World Wrestling Entertainment, which of course was formerly the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, the World Wrestling Federation. Of course, Vince McMahon, 75 years of age. This is his Kiss My Ass Club, which he brought in the one part of the, I think, the Attitude Era. A man did this, and there's times you see when it's like his backside sticking out. It's no wonder Andrew Flint that he ended up having issues in terms of like sexual improprieties, and then again, genius, but flawed, and finally forced to step out. Will the world of sport miss him because we need people like that?
The world of sport will, I think, yes. I mean, look, the wrestling is. If I'm being really, really brutally honest, I don't consider it a sport, but I don't mean that as an insult at all. It is a performance. It's a production, and I mean, maybe the two things are to ferment each other in a way. If you are at the center of building something up that has never been done remotely at this level, the concept is all about image and promotion. You are convincing yourself of an alternate reality. And maybe the people in positions of power who are in situations like this convince themselves anything could be okay, anything might be acceptable. I am this all-powerful, all-deciding character. So that is the negative side of somebody who has the energy and drive and determination to push something like this through. Look, I have fond memories of wrestling when I was a child. I would say I've grown out of wrestling. But people do like that level of entertainment. If anything, just to see how bad a personality Donald Trump is in the wrestling ring as well as in The Apprentice. But look, it is a promotion. And I think a profile like that, given his, improprieties, is important that he stays in the public eye, in my opinion, for good and bad reasons. If he slowly drifted away quietly to avoid potential negative attention, that wouldn't be it wouldn't be right. So for the sport will like him to be back as long as he can keep going, but he needs to be in the public eye for good and bad reasons.
Nima, I'm going to finish off with East on this, and we'll ask you. I mean, he transformed wrestling from a great bit of entertainment was kind of like very, very localized. He brought all of wrestling together in the States. WWE is the world wrestling brand. That's it. Like, you aspire to be there. It's always been great entertainment. It's changed over the years. He himself, he went through the steroid trials. He was, torn apart many different times. He lost it the first time at XFL when it was about to happen, and then it fell apart. But he brought wrestling into the homes of people everywhere. I believe you would have watched it as a kid as well.
Oh, I absolutely did. I mean, he made it what he understood that at a very early, which makes him kind of unique, is that he understood that what wrestling could be as an entertainment. Yes, as a sport, of course, the classical freestyle and Greco-Roman that we have in the Olympics. But what he realized was there is an entertainment here. There is an entertainment side that you can create here with good guys and bad guys, and the show at packed arenas and fireworks and people jumping off the top rope and pretending to hit each other, and to actually sell that to the audience and everyone watching. And then you have, the entrances of people like Ultimate the Warrior or The Undertaker and all these characters that let's remember, he's the one who invented all of these characters and everything and all of these people. So he was, I think, more than a wrestler and more than a businessman. I think he was like a Hollywood producer. He understood what entertainment was in that area, in that moment in time. And he had his finger on the culture, on the pulse of the culture in the 80s especially. And he realized that that's what people wanted, and he went with it, and he built these storylines and these these feuds between different characters that he invented and stuff like that. And if you just look at it from that aspect of it, that was pretty unique, because I remember as a kid growing up in the 80s and early 90s, on the school ground, on the playground, everyone was either Hulk Hogan or Ultimate Warrior or The Undertaker or Bret the Hitman Hart, the Hart Foundation, all these, the Bushwhackers, Jake the Snake, all these characters. We all remember them. They're pop culture references, because of how well and how good he was. He realized that this was the time for the right time to do it, and he marketed it the right way as well. As for sports, like, I don't consider professional wrestling to be as much as sports, because, well, it's not a sport. We know that it's already decided who's going to win beforehand. It's about creating a script. So, but I mean, as an entertainment guru, I think he is unique. absolutely unique.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the people who come through, we saw in this photo here, of course, one of the people who is holding, so Rikishi, who's actually related is The Rock, is holding here in the bigger photo. And of course, The Rock has gone on to huge superstardom in his own right as an actor, but came through that. I remember early days, he was terrible as an actor. Isolt, finishing up with you on this, I mean, your wrestling memories, because we had it in the show. I played the wrestling themes, and we had interviews with wrestlers, and people had to guess who it was. Your brother was a big fan of wrestling, but will McMahon go down in as the greatest sports entertainer of all time?
So for me, my poor now deceased grandmother used to go and pick up all the wrestling figurines for my brother. I'm sure they didn't call them figurines; they were toys, weren't they? Figurines. Now I sound like
action figures, Isolt. Action figurines. You just insulted me. You just insulted my entire childhood. Figurines.
I'm so sorry.
They were action figures.
My apologies. What I will say though is Vince McMahon has not just changed wrestling. As someone who spends, as we all know, an inordinate amount of time going to particularly combat sports events, he has changed how entire events are run. The pageantry that he brought to XFL that came from wrestling, that level of everything, because everything is scripted in wrestling, everything had to be thought out to a level that I don't think other sports ever did. And promotions, exactly as both Nima and Andrew were saying, it's such the pageantry, it's everything about it. Like I see it particularly, I think there's a huge crossover between boxing and wrestling in terms of how the event goes, that huge level of focus on building it into an event. Because your actual fights, or in his case, something like Royal Rumble, the actual duration of what you're watching isn't particularly long. So you build everything up around it. And I think for me, Vince McMahon was a different category of sports person in the sense, or sports owner, in the sense that he changed things in a way that has a direct impact on so many other sports that he never touched, that he never went near. He has changed the way we view sports, and the way sports is now perceived as, it doesn't necessarily just need to be the 90 minutes you see on the field. Everything is now a production from start to finish. We've even seen now, unfortunately, we do see it in boxing, and I'd like it to go away, where one promoter has now gone a step further and has now given us concerts in the middle of fights. Always upsetting. But I think you have to, something about Vince McMahon, that even when you hear of the indiscretions, you hear about how it was being obviously financially addressed by the WWE to address some of these things in the background. Vince McMahon has changed sports and will always be a person who has had an influence like very few others who aren't directly competing. And do you know what? He got involved with the whole thing. He had his son-in-law, his son, his daughter. Like, it's a full family entertainment business, and we need to view it as that. It's entertainment, and it has changed sports for us in a way that will not be seen by, I doubt, by another person. Perhaps the only other person I could put on the same sort of level of pedestal, and it's not at his level, but the only other person I think has really changed how a sport event goes is probably Barry Hearn, because he went from darts, came into boxing, like he's gone through a number of sports and rolled that format out. Snooker, darts, boxing. They also have a golfing aspect to them in terms of some of the people they managed, but rolling out that different, going, this is an entertainment event, let's roll it out across other sports. It doesn't matter what sport is actually being played, let's turn it into an event.
Well, look, even in terms of technological improvements that he brought in, for example, to field events, the Skycam came in from XFL. The on the field kind of the steady cam as they're running with the players on it, again, XFL. All these different things he brought in, and I mean, I think it's, there's so many things to knock him down, but at the same time, we have to sort of like value what he's done. And again, as you said, he himself was third generation in boxing and wrestling. Like his family, they were all like McMahons, they were all like that. So, very quickly, Cian said, okay, that it's Catholic Ireland coming through with the word figurines instead of figures. So it's figures. There you go. Figures. There you go. And not toys. On that note, I'll say thank you. Sorry. So I'll say thank you very much, Nima. Thank you very much, Isolt. Andrew dropped off.
He left us.
Yeah, he said it's been a bit, he knew he was going to get picked on again. So about wrestling. But anyway, Thank you. See you both next week. Thank you very much. And again,
See you next week.
See you next
thank
week.
you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
And on that note, I will say goodbye to all of you as well, and say thank you very much for watching us once again. And of course, same time, same time, same place next week for more Capital Sports 3.0. And we're saying take care of yourselves and each other.